the particular area that you are specialized in, and then what you're kind of seeing in terms of the energy saving parameters over there. So Samo, I'm going to start with you first. So you do kind of primary water saving programs and etc. Can you kind of give us a brief description on what do you guys do? Permission to use our site as an example for these. What do you
Yeah.
guys do? And then like the schedule of what you do, and then kind of the impact of what the water saving program has.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So we've had the opportunity to work together with Elisa on several of her properties. So thank you for that. What we do is during the acquisition of properties, engaging us to get a water conservation proposal. We put together that proposal, share it with her. They build that cost, that capex, the cost of the project into their capex, so that at the time of acquisition, we are usually within 4 to 6 weeks, we're on her properties installing ultra high efficiency toilets, shower heads, and aerators. The reason why we're doing that is because on most of the properties that she's acquiring, B and C class assets that are built in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, most of those toilets, the same toilets that were on the property when it was built. So when we go in there and we replace them, we're replacing it with the toilet that's a zero point 0.8 gallon per flush. But on average, the toilets that are on those older properties are around 2.5 gallons per flush. So when you reduce it to 0.8, that's a significant reduction in the consumption. That's the ultimate goal with installing these ultra high efficiency fixtures, reducing that consumption. On average, across the properties that we install, where that water and sewer expense anywhere from 30 to 60% on the age of the property, as well as the rates, the water and sewer rates in that specific city, that kind of impact how much we reduce. But that's kind of a real high level overview. Once our crews get on site, they're installing between 50 to 60 toilets per day. So on most properties, we're in and out within a week, and we project manage it from start to finish. So it's not a, hey, we're going to change one toilet here, one toilet here. It's 50 toilets per day. We're on and off your property. And usually within that first billing cycle, you're already starting to see the savings. But that's a high level overview. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Thank you so much, Insamo, for that. And then we'll kind of get into some of these numbers as well. And John and Jacob, who wants to go and kind of describe, kind of the solar energy, because I think a lot of owners started to do the water saving conservation program, and we're going to talk about the loan and the benefits of doing that too. And then, but not so many people do the solar project on multifamily. There's a lot of people who do solar, but not on multifamily projects. So Jacob, can you kind of give us a little bit more description on like what you do, what your company do, Sunrenew do, in terms of the solar stuff?
Just like Anselmo does with water conservation, we look for ways to add value. There's a lot of investors and owner operators that love tenants, but they do love making money more. And so that's what we do. And when I said we're a developer and an installer, that's really what we do. Similar to real estate development, you get the developer that brings in the finance, he figures it out, he builds it, size the system, and then the contractor really executes that and takes it to the finish line. He gets the permits, does the engineering, does the installation, commissioning, making sure the system's up and performing optimally. So that's a lot of what we do. We take a look at a property and we assess it. It's a really a true feasibility study is what we look at. Is where is the open area to install solar. Our company has installed every type of solar there is: rooftop, ground mount, carport, superstructures, parking lot, above parking garage structures. We've done it all, so we have the in-house experience to know where the hurdles are, where the challenges may be, and ways to value engineer the system. So speaking, quickly on your buildings, Lisa, the buildings you purchased were just wonderful candidates for solar. They had big open roof space that's flat, so we can do a ballast system without any roof penetrations, and it really reduces the energy, up to, I think we were between 80 and 90%. And so that's what we look for. We do the feasibility study. We come up with the proposal, the design, and then Jacob handles the utility underwriting, because that's a critical component of assessing a property, is how much do you actually save with solar. And it varies, because in most utility territories around the country, there's fixed charges, there's demand charges, there's all these charges that can and cannot be offset by solar. So we rip out the nuts and bolts of the engine, put it back together, and we come up with a very accurate design and proposal.
Yeah, gonna dive into this a little bit deeper. And Samuel, I don't know if you had a chance to kind of maybe pull up one of your quotes that you have created for us in terms of water saving, etc. And I know Jacob and John, you guys have sent me some quotes on this. So, with your permission, if it's okay, I'm just kind of searching my inbox over here. Maybe Jacob will get to it a little faster than I am. Again, this is an open session, so anything can happen in these sessions. So I want to kind of pull up some of Jacob's estimation over here and ask him a little bit more questions over here. So recently we just did a project with. So the story on this is I want to just kind of talk about is we didn't know about solar either. The answer was always like, no, like solar is really expensive. Where's the ROI on this? Like even though we want to do the world good, do the earth a favor on this, but we couldn't really justify for the cost of installing these solar. So I got connected with John through actually one of our broker, who I'm gonna be putting on our webinar sometimes in the future as well, with his permission. So we got connected over here, over that, and then on one of the building that was really efficiently structured for solar. It was just a single building. Al Cortez is a property that we were on. So I was kind of underwriting this, and it was an open bid project. So it's like, how do you actually win in this competitive market? And what we saw, he's like, hey, take a look at the solar. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So then got contacted with John, and then he gave me a quote on this, and then all of a sudden I realized, I think Jeff gave a little bit more detail into this. Is like he basically, the quote, save us about 60% electricity power, which is a lot. And then I think the business model over here is really, if you have an all bills paid building, which means your landlord's actually paying all your utilities, and then you're charging back the tenant the money, right? Like the utility, but because you're also pushing the rent and your system is kind of a little bit inefficient, you're not never gonna be able to charge back 100%. So in order to kind of the solar saving so much, also the water saving so much, allows us to basically zero out that gap. So essentially, making 100% return on this, so with no waste in that. So that way, the tenant's not getting increased rate, but because we're getting the utility a much more efficient way, that this saves on our bottom line, increase our cash flow. But the biggest thing is, if you're thinking about selling the property, increase the valuation as well. So with that, I want to kind of get into let John and Jacob speak about like warranty, all these questions. Our LP asked a gazillion questions to them. So what are some common questions you hear investor ask you? And then, for example, like, is there warranties on these solar roof? Oh, is it gonna make a hole on my roof and create a liability? Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about, like Q&A question style, like, what is the warranty policies, and does that carry to the next owner when someone's like kind of looking into that for multifamily? What would you say to them?
Yeah, going through the lay of the land. Obviously, we're trying to make value through sustainability, and going back to your point real quick of, is solar really expensive, and going through the El Cortez acquisition, your business model is perfect for solar. If you get the project cost in on the original acquisition, then if you don't mind me speaking about El Cortez, you're going to save about $50,000 a year, and you get about half of the system paid for by tax incentives, so the 26% tax credit, and then you get to depreciate all but half of the tax credit. So 87% of the total cost you get to depreciate. That's your depreciable basis. So when you take it on a cash basis with an estimated like 24% federal tax bracket and a 6% state tax bracket, about a good chunk, 45%, is paid for by the federal government. So you're still saving $50,000 a year, but when you reduce your expenses, just like Anselmo can attest to this, you reduce your water expenses, you reduce your electricity expenses, your net operating income goes up. And this is my time in commercial real estate brokerage, that most investors and most real estate owners want to add value. And so how do we add value and lower expenses? This is one good way to do that. So your business model makes perfect sense. The subsequent questions that go on top of that is, what is the warranty period? So you've got an energy generating system on your roof. Is it warranted? And the answer is yes, it's warranted for 25 years. So all tier 1 equipment, not the junk, but there's about, there's 1,000 solar manufacturers, but the top 20 is really Bloomberg New Energy Finance rated. They go through all this testing and rigmarole to get on Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the list. And so most investment worthy companies will get on that list. And so, but all solar panels, even tier 2, will have a 25-year performance warranty. The good ones will have an insurance that back the warranty. So you got either PowerGuard or Munich RE that do insure the warranty from the big company. And we only use companies that are global behemoths because they stand behind their warranty and their quality is great. Another question that you mentioned before, is there roof penetrations? Sometimes there is, but in your case, there will not be any roof penetrations. There's just an interconnected series of racking that's weighted down by ballast block. It's about 3 pounds a square foot. So we've never actually engineered a system that a building could not hold in California and Arizona. So that's a good question. So we're not going and punching a bunch of holes in your roof. It's just an interconnected series of racking. If you need to re-roof, which is another question, you can take off sections of panels and you're really just unclipping them, removing the panel, removing the tray. We can re-roof, and that allows for easy maintenance of the roof. But we always recommend, if the roof is a little older, then either getting it redone or at least putting a roof coating on it, because the solar panels that do take the direct sunlight will help extend the life of your roof. So that's one point that it's not accounted for in a lot of proposals, just like heat saving, HVAC saving. So if the sun isn't directly on the roof, are the units below it going to have to crank their AC more because of that heat differential? So the answer is no.
So it's almost like a shield,
correct. And so we did a building, and it was a west facing pitched roof. And they said it is unbelievably cooler in here during the summertime, and the summertime gets to 120 degrees. And that air conditioner relief is never included in our proposals because it's just hard to justify in most cases. But it's the extra gravy that you're going to see and extend the life of the mechanical equipment because it's not working as hard in the summertime.
That's a very good point. Now the question I have over here is that when you're roofing, when you're taking these equipments off, does that have anything? Because anything with warranty, you always have to worry about what is the clause to remove this warranty? But does that void the warranty? Because you have to move the equipment, etc. How does that procedure kind of go?
No, it doesn't void the warranty in any way. You want a licensed contractor to do it anyway. You don't want to have your property maintenance guy up there removing solar modules and putting it back on, because there is installation guidelines that we have to adhere to with both the racking and the modules, and if you violate those, and it does there goes the warranty. But in a general sense, if we had to come out and remove panels and reinstall them, your warranty is still intact, because the modules, the biggest warranty is the performance of the modules. You want it to perform for 25 years. That's where you get your value and your savings from. And so having to remove those and put those back on, if a qualified contractor or we do it, then it does not void the warranty. And one other question that you asked is, does the warranty transfer to the new buyer? And that is 100% correct.
Mhm.
In the equipment warranties and installation guidelines, it says that equipment warranties will transfer to current owner. So you don't even need paperwork to say, I'm selling the building.
Mhm. Um, and I guess the other question I have is, okay, that's all really great. And then I think there's also some different deal structure in terms of like what does the current owner, if they put in all these expenses, they sell to the next owner. By the way, in our Alcatraz deals, when you're saved to $50,000 a year in terms of utility, affect your bottom line. And that using a multiplier and a cap rate of 5% to evaluating that. That itself is increase our valuation. I think was double than what we have invested into solar panel installation. So by the way, right away, if you were just to buy and sell, put a solar roof on, like you increased your valuation right away. Of course, valuation is something that you couldn't realize until you sold the property, but that's a material impact. And for long-term holder, long-term buy and hold multifamily investor, then it's about 10 years for the break even. And because the warranty is 25 years, so you still got another 15 years of profit to profit from there. And again, if you offset that from the refinance perspective, you have reduced your bottom line. So that also increase your valuation based on whatever the lender's cap rate is. So that definitely is a one-to-one transfer. In terms of notice that in your design in Amara and like Alcortez was very different. So different utility company, that's what we have in Arizona, for example. Oftentimes your state may have different utility company that is, monopolizing the market share over there, for lack of better words. So can you kind of talk about specifically in Arizona or other state that you guys do contracts at? What are the differences between different utility company, and what are the first things that generic wise, if you're investing in other 50 to 50 states or whatever, you like what should you think about in terms of like, hey, utility company, what should you be researched to see if right away like a solar roof kind of makes sense?
Yeah, so John, chime in if I missed something here, but um, with El Cortez and Amara, what was so different about them was that El Cortez is on APS territory, whereas Amara was on SRP. And the difference there is that one utility does net metering, where the other one doesn't. And what that kind of means is that when your system doesn't really use a kilowatt hour that's being produced by your solar system, APS, which has a net metering, will give you like a 1-to-1 credit for that kilowatt hour, whereas SRP won't, and they'll buy that kilowatt hour for a very cheap rate, like around 2 cents. So that's why it makes more sense to, design a system that is around like 80 to 100% offset of your energy bill there, because you can afford to overproduce there. Whereas in SRP, they'll give you a really low rate, so that ROI won't be the same. So that's why Amara is less than.
Yeah, that's one thing you want to look at in your development, in your feasibility study, your analysis of your multifamily property is which utility serves you and what are their rate structures. And that could make a big difference. We've seen a lot of other companies that are just, fly by night. They'll go and propose 100% system in SRP territory, and you're going to export 60 to 70% of the energy that you make, and they're going to pay you 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And so where we do an analysis, we look at on a 15-minute basis, what is your apartment consuming for every 15 minutes for an entire year? It's a ridiculous spreadsheet. And we put that in our software, and it spits out, this is the most appropriate system size for the value of the system. And what we sized Amara at in SRP territory that does not have net metering was 38%. I think you're exporting a few percentage here and there, but the lion's share of the production is going to being soaked up by the apartment building usage. Whereas if Amara was an SRP, if Amara was an APS, and we're talking Arizona utilities now, but other utilities in California that we work with, they have net metering. So it's a different rate structure, but primarily it's net metering. You can size systems up to 100%. So that's one thing you really got to be cautious of when you're interviewing with solar contractors or developers, is how in depth is their knowledge of utility rate structures, because that can make or break a deal.
Hmm. And which states, in your opinion, make sense to do solar improvement on?
So currently, we actually see our most projects are in California and Arizona, also Colorado, New Mexico, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. Those are, primarily the good ones for solar markets. But the ones you kind of stay away from are Texas, Florida, and Utah, mainly because of like the low cost of energy. So that's kind of why we steer away from those.
Look, oh, I thought it would be like the weather impact as well.
Yeah.
The states.
Big one too.
They just have high demand charges in those utility territories. So let's say we saved you 10 cents per kilowatt hour. In Texas, their savings is like 5 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Can still be done.
Right.
There's still good applications in Texas, Florida, and Utah. However, you're not going to see a dramatic explosion of solar in those states because of the utility rate structures.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Also, and Samuel, I don't know if you were able to kind of pull up some of these quotes over here. I want to kind of show some of the numbers that we did on the deal that we just sold over here. Oak Tree, also known as the Rise on McDowell.
I didn't find it, but I sent you another one, so you
Okay,
can
great, awesome.
pull that up. But I'll talk
Yeah,
a little bit of kind of,
yeah.
you
go ahead, sorry.
mentioned one of the things that, and I'm glad you brought it up, but that you look into solar, you look into water conservation. It's not that sexy, right? Everybody wants that beautiful gym. They want the granite countertops. They want everything else. But they don't look at different ways to cut the water and sewer expenses.
What do you mean? I
like you
love
do.
toilets. You can't live without
Oh, yes. As I like to say, it's the most used amenity on your property. So why aren't you upgrading it? So everybody out there listening, upgrade the most used amenity on your multifamily property. So hopefully everybody can see this. This is just kind of a proposal we put together for Elisa and her team on a property that that we recently did the installation out there. So for just an idea, the estimated investment. So this is what it's going to cost you for us to go out there to install toilets, shower heads, aerators, project manage it from start to finish. You're looking at a cost of $137,940 based on the water and sewer rates that are in that specific city. In year one, we're to save you $64,339.05. So the ROI that you can see up there kind of on the top is we're looking at 26 months, just under 26 months, your estimated ROI based on the annual savings that we are estimating. And then you see the estimated gallons, how much water we're actually going to save the property. But you also mentioned the value increase in year. So just by changing out the toilets, shower heads, and aerators and reducing that expense on your multifamily, I think this was probably a 5 cap or a 6 cap.
No, you use a 6.5 cap.
6.5.
Yeah, because I just did that. Yeah.
Okay. So 6.5 cap, we're estimating, a value increase of almost $1 million.
Yeah, so if you use the normal cap rates that we're all trading at, I'm not even talking about 4 cap, that's what everything is trading at now. But using a 5 cap rate, it's at $1.2 million valuation increase. So it's almost 10x, right? You're talking about 10x investments over here. So we're all talking about multipliers over here in terms of investments and the returns. We don't really like the shower heads though, so I'll say. We hope you have a different product over there that's actually expendable for these shower heads and whatnot. But the toilet, and Samuel, can you tell me a little bit about the mechanism of the toilets? Because I know that for small properties, they don't even install this. They don't come out and install it, right? Unless if we're doing them at bulk and negotiate with them on multiple sites all together. So they'll come out and they'll say, oh, we're going to give you these toilets. And so we installed them inappropriately and caused us some issues as well. So, and Samuel, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the mechanism of this and how is it able to achieve You know,
Yeah.
because some of our tenants are always wondering like, oh, low flow, no, it's never gonna flush.
Yes.
So you know, some of that, like the how does that mechanism actually work?
So not all toilets are created equal. I'll just start off that way. You know, a lot of toilets out there, they're all going to using less water. So really what they're doing is they're just making the tank smaller to use less water. Now, Niagara, who we've partnered up with, they produce the Stealth toilet. It only uses 0.8 gallons per flush. They re-engineered the toilet. So even though it's only using 0.8 gallons per flush, it actually has the power to get the waste out of your apartment into the sewer system where it belongs. It also doesn't have a flapper. So on every toilet, so anybody listening to this, go to your toilet, pop open the lid, and look, you've probably got a flapper that hasn't been replaced in 2 years. The average lifespan on that flapper is 2 years. If you haven't replaced it, you're probably got a slow leak and you're paying more in water and sewer than you should be. Because our toilets don't have a flapper, they're virtually maintenance free. You don't developing that slow leak where you start to see that slow creep in your water and sewer bill over time. So that being flapperless, as well as the only 0.8 gallons per flush, that's the biggest reason why we've partnered up with Niagara Stealth. They also have a 15-year warranty on it as well. So that's big in the industry. If something happens to it, you reach out to us and we'll get it fixed.
Oh, interesting about 15-year warranty. So I'm gonna ask the same question I asked John. What are some of the events that will basically like eliminate the warranty over there? Like what we should be avoiding our maintenance guys from doing in order to still honor
Yeah.
that warranty. Yeah.
Yes. So like biggest things that we see is don't put a sledgehammer to your toilet. That usually voids the warranty because it doesn't. We're not going to cover that. Two is there is a labor warranty that we do include on post installation. We do not recommend that anybody going in and pulling the toilet try to do it themselves because it just takes away that labor warranty. When you're dealing with water, when you're dealing with the angle stop, when you're dealing with the whack that we install, it's going to take away that labor warranty. So usually, within those first 30, 60, 90 days, if there's any issues on it, reach out to us immediately. We'll get it addressed. We'll work together with you and your team to make sure that it's done appropriately and everything stays within that warranty. Now that's just the labor warranty. We also do include, a 15-year parts warranty. So that's where I mentioned don't put a hedge slant, hit it with a break it, crack anything. On most of anything that's done to the bowl and to the vitreous china, it will be covered within those 15 years. So
Yeah.
reach out to us.
And I think one thing was not calculated too is during COVID, and I think even a lot of post-COVID time. We did notice our tenants stay at home more. So there's averagely per day, each person at least 5 flush more per person
Yeah.
in the same unit over there. And I think even now with more remote working, I think that number maybe come down a little bit, but not back to the pre-COVID time. So that's something to kind of consider as well. So these are definitely some programs we'll kind of get into when we notice the tenants are using more. I mean, that same goes for the electricity saving from solar panel as well. When people are at home more, using computer more, doing all that stuff, using if it's individual HVAC, using the AC more, and etc. I have some questions over here. I'm gonna ask both sides. It's pretty straightforward there. And Samuel, like in your estimate, when you estimate money saved, what are you using as a baseline model over here? Are you using, because it's obviously 0.8 gallon per flush. Obviously, you look at the properties, you look at the age of it, but what are typical toilets flush are? Just to educate some people over here, maybe not all of us are flipping over that toilet
Yeah.
top to try to figure out. Yeah.
So great question. So on average, right now, anything that's installed has to be at least a 1.6 gallon per flush toilet.
Mm.
But when you start digging into like the 60s, 70s, 80s, where if you haven't replaced that toilet, it is more than likely flushing at least at a 3.5 gallon per flush, if not more, because when it was installed at a 3.5. But I wish I was as efficient as I was in the 80s. I know that's not true. So your toilet is definitely not as efficient as it was back in the 80s when it was installed. So for the toilet specifically, it's a 1.5. On the shower heads, you're seeing right now 1.8 is what's being installed. It could be up to 0.5 gallons per minute. The aerators themselves, so on the kitchen, you're seeing anywhere from like a 2.2 gallon per minute down to a 1.8. And we reduce that. So like just the kitchen, the bathroom aerator, if it's installed right now, it's maybe 1.5 or 2.2. We reduce it down to a 0.5 gallon per minute. So that's a huge reduction there. Most of the time, people are just brushing their teeth, so it doesn't have to be, a 2.2 or 1.8. They're not going to complain about it. Now, I know you mentioned the shower heads. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest issue that we come across. Residents are very particular about their shower heads. Some of them, we see it, we install our shower head, and before we even left the building, they've already put back.
Yeah, especially older residents, right? Like we had a property that where we installed this, and every single person complained because they're like senior, essentially senior communities, the people who are 70s or 80s. They're like, oh, we don't want this. We just want this like a little hand thing.
The wand, everybody wants.
Wand.
Yeah, so that's the biggest. I've never seen anybody replace the toilet, take out the toilet we installed and put in their own. So. And just between,
a little harder. Yeah.
Just between these fixtures alone, it accounts for more than 70% of a multifamily property's water consumption.
Yeah. So when you're underwriting the deals and etc., I think this definitely helps. And then you can kind of get it down to, you have to look at your utility bills and then see what portion of the water you're going to be able to save. In the case of solar, what portion of the electricity that you're going to be able to save. Don't just do a generic line item of all utility and do a 0.8% of that or this and that. We do that at a high level, but once we kind of get into the deal a little bit deeper, we assign the particular utility saved there. That's awesome. John, I know you're very in tune. Actually, I'm gonna ask this other question to Jacob first because I'm very curious to know, just for my own purpose. So Jacob, I know that you have designed Amara twice. And that you have designed the solar panel for our 300 unit project twice. And then the second time when you came back, you found 20% extra. And then also the saving of the actual design of the solar panel has dropped dramatically too. So can you speak a little bit about that process, that design process for solar design?
Yeah, definitely I can. So typically what happens, we just do like an initial, or I do an initial design when you first request an acquisition for me. And what kind of caused Amara and El Cortez to change over time is just when John and I would go on site, kind of check out the roof, we'd see some stuff that we weren't able to see with the aerial images that were available to us. So that's one main cause why things change. And specifically for Amara, what changed that one originally is because we initially assumed that was in APS territory. And like we mentioned,
right. I mentioned wrong.
Yes. Change things. So we had to model it down to about I think it was 40% or 38%, like John said. So that's
40%, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why things change over time. It's just what we noticed. The first design is never going to be the final one because we run into a lot of issues, a lot of things we see during our site visits.
Yeah, APS has the lion's share of Metro Phoenix and how it serves, but SRP has some pockets in there of Phoenix. And this, when you said, let's do a model on this property before you even got electric bills yourself, we modeled it and just assumed it was APS. Mm-hmm. But when we found out it was SRP, we had to scale back, and it reduces the energy savings because we shrink the system size, but it also reduces the cost to install as well. Right. But would never put you in a situation where you'd be selling back to SRP and they pay you 2 cents a kilowatt hour for it. That makes
But
no sense. So we look to optimize the value on that.
I don't know if this is too sensitive to discuss over here. I know John has some private conversation on this before. Why is the utility company in kind of our sun location area? Maybe I'll change the question to this to what states do you see that are most friendly to electricity, like to solar installation? And then what are some of these states in terms of government green energy programs and etc. I know we have listener that maybe in Washington states as well. Solar's probably not as good at Washington state because 8 months out of the time it's all rainy, but rainy doesn't mean that you don't have solar power. I understand that. So it's basically kind of what states are kind of good state that are really friendly to solar. And then the second question to that is what can people do to make their government or their utility, like to move the needles on utility company being a little bit more friendly to that? Yeah.
That's a great question. I have another company that models utility rate structures across the country. So we have in-depth and firsthand knowledge of who's doing what. Like Jacob said earlier, the good states are California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. Not only are they utility friendly, they grant interconnections. There's some utilities in the Midwest and that they don't have net metering, or they won't even allow you to interconnect without a grid impact study, and sometimes that can cost you up to $100,000. So depending on your system size. So it's either you have really good sun or you have high cost of energy. And if you have neither of those, then the state has to back you. So Jacob mentioned Massachusetts and New Jersey, for instance. They have a program which is state funded, that's SRECs, solar renewable energy certificates that they sell and buy. So essentially what that is you are selling your RECs, renewable energy certificates. It's a real thing. When you go solar, Elisa, you own RECs. So every megawatt hour that you produce from El Cortez and Amara, you own those RECs. Out here in Arizona, there's no one to buy it. The state doesn't buy it.
What is RECs?
It's a renewable energy certificate.
Oh,
and so
okay.
one REC, it's kind of like a unit. So one REC is a unit, and that's a megawatt hour. So it's 1,000 kilowatt hours.
Okay. So could I accumulate it in my buildings because this is all unit that people get assigned, right? Yeah. So does that mean that if I don't use it, can I use it in other forms?
You can. So their RECs are starting to be more valuable across the country. So when you hear Amazon and Google and all these and Apple and these big corporations, they're like, we're 100% sustainable. Yes, they went solar on their building, but they have so many data centers and big energy users that they buy these renewable energy certificates to enough of those to cover their consumption. So when you accumulate enough of them, so as you're acquiring properties and you're going solar, those RECs, those units of energy are accumulating, and you'll never lose them, and you could bundle them and sell them. So there is a value. It's very low in Arizona right now, but in states like Massachusetts and New Jersey, the state buys those because basically they give them to the utility companies so that the utility companies can balance out their portfolio of dirty to clean energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's almost like, I'm eating a lot of beef. But basically I'm negative because someone's telling me that's sustainable.
Well, yeah,
whatever that is, and then the person with the vegetarian is racking out.
I just slammed
McDonald's.
I just slammed a McDonald's Big Mac, but I ate a piece of celery, so it cancels it out, right?
Right.
That's kind of what they're doing.
It's like my spouse is saying I don't like eating. We lost Ansamo. But it's basically my spouse saying like I don't like eating meat. So I'm gonna take all your meat. I'm eating meat, and then but you like eating vegetables, so take all my vegetables.
It's like beyond meat. It's made with like bacon fat, so it's a vegetable technically, but it's not vegan, right?
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough about the Rex, I love like you talked about this. I'm really glad that you're really kind of versed in this. Like, you're kind of at the high level in the investment side. I know that you install solar panel for churches, look at the tax credits and etc. So interestingly, you brought up the Rex. I'm trying to like now my wheels are turning how we make this not just multifamily investment, but is there more gravies on top? Is So who actually keeps the Rex? Let's say we installed them on our building. Who keeps the Rex? Is it the original owner that installed them, and does it get passed down to the next guy? And how is the Rex actually getting calculated?
Yeah, it's the owner operator of the system, and you're. I'd have to go back and see how many kilowatt hours your systems are producing. I don't have it off the top of my head, but 1,000 kilowatt hours equals one rec. And
Mm.
if you owned it for 7 years, you could accumulate those and sell those because it was your property. You owned it, you operated it, and those are your certificates. You have proof of ownership because you purchased the system.
And then it can once the system was sold to the next guy, then that next
It-
guy start accumulating Rex.
Yep, they would own the recs.
So one would say, sorry, I have a standing stacks. One would say as the assuming the government's gonna double down on what they say they're going to do, which is really invest in sustainable energies and etc. And too bad Ensemble dropped off probably due to internet issues. I was going to ask him if there's certain things with water saving too. But John, do you know, like, is it just solar, the kilowatt that produces Rex? Does other resources, like other sustainable resources saving, also give you these kind of credits as well?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that, and I think I'm a little stumped on that. A renewable energy certificate, I know it's for solar, it's for wind, and geothermal can actually produce energy. So you would get the renewable energy certificates, but energy saving, water conservation, that type of thing, you're not generating energy. So it wouldn't qualify for that. And similar with LED lights, that's another thing that we haven't talked about that's a very highly beneficial to do LED retrofits if you have incandescent bulbs. That's an energy saving measure. It's reducing energy, it's not producing.
Producing.
I think
Gotcha.
that's the line, is producing versus reducing.
Gotcha.
Correct.
And then now in terms of you talked about producing, and I'm kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. Like overall, the solar panel is not energy positive because there takes energy to make a solar panel, right? But maybe it is. How many years do you have to hold on to this? Now we're kind of talking about really net zero. Like how many years do you have to hold on to the solar panel and generating energies in order to kind of offset the whole thing?
Sure. Are you ready for the dance?
Yes.
I don't know that. I've read a lot of data. I've been in the business 14 years, and we're one of the leaders in commercial solar for Arizona and California. There's been studies that come out, and needless to say, they're biased by who wrote those studies. And so I've seen studies that are one way, like, hey, energy produced over 25 years of a solar panel or 35 years of a solar panel's asset life, because it's warranted for 25 years, it's going to last longer. At the end of 25 years, it's guaranteed to produce 85% of what it did day one. So, you have a 35-year asset life, probably going to last you 50 years on a panel. Is it going to produce more energy than it took to make it? My answer is yes. Can I back that with data? I don't know if there is scientific data out there that tells this is how much energy was used to make a solar panel. The same argument goes with wind. I know it's more heavily argued in wind, is making all that steel and the turbines and the gears and maintenance and all that stuff. Does that outweigh the benefits? And I believe I've read studies that I think are more credible that say yes, it is, but I don't have any data myself on what that is.
Gotcha. So it is kind of come to politics, the economy is all kind of related over here. So I'm gonna leave politics alone. But that's interesting. So the rec, could it be? So that means I'm actually owner of Rex then, and
You own Rex.
after.
Yeah. How
So
does it feel?
good. I don't know how many I own or so. So the next question I will ask Jacob after we call heading up over here is like how many rec do I own? So he's have to produce that report for us. So that's very interesting. So if I sold the property, does rec kind of follow me then
You own
as
those Rex.
as an
And
entity, as an
as
entity
as
that
an
holds the
entity.
property? Yeah.
And you need Rex in certain states. That don't give, like the state gives money to go solar, like Massachusetts and New Jersey. So
Right.
states like Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, even California, the state doesn't buy them, but there's a secondary market out there. There's if you go to srectrade.com and things like that, that if you
Oh,
own,
what is it? SR trade.
yeah, srec.com. So SREC
Okay.
Trade. It's a brokerage platform
Oh,
for carbon,
okay.
basically
So it's like a
carbon capture.
Bitcoin, but this is like a sustainable interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so you can load all your SRECs on there, assuming that you have an ample amount. Like a residential, a homeowner couldn't load their SREC or the RECs on there. It's worthless. But you owning multiple properties and they're large systems, you bundle those together, those could be sold. And whether you get a few $1,000s for them or $10,000 or $20,000 for them, there's a value for them, because some big company, like a manufacturing facility, GM, Google, Apple, they're like, we need more RECs than we can put solar on our roof. We're out of land, so we need to buy more, and they do buy more.
Okay, interesting. So that could potentially open opportunities for investment candidates that would invest in our investments to say, hey, we're actually going to do an exclusive contract with, I don't know, IKEA. Just going to keep it out there because IKEA has a commitment out
IKEA is
there.
a big one.
Yeah, they're going to offset the emissions and buy out regs possibly. So it's possible that we could actually do some additional, but sounds like it's not like a lot of makes not material difference in terms of the investment over there. Now, in terms of what you see, is there a hard requirement for certain investors, or like a big institutional investors that are interested in investing in buildings and projects that is more sustainable friendly, or fit a certain metrics? We know there's the leads measures to certain things, but do you see like particular investors that maybe kind of exclusively say they have to check these boxes before these boxes are checked, and then we're not going to invest in the properties or whatnot? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what is the biggest hot button right now? It is ESG, environmental social governance. There's a lot of opportunity. There's funds, there's ETFs, there's all these big institutional investors that want the green energy. They want it, but they're not willing to take a 2% return for it, right? They're interested in making money, but if they can make money and invest in something that does sustainability or green or solar energy or water conservation, that's the feel good part of ESG. And we're really seeing a lot more larger companies, even in bad states, come out with these RFPs because they need to hit ESG goals. So investors that are really interested in making a great return in real estate, because the real estate market is so hot right now, especially multifamily. Phoenix is probably, I think, number one, one of the top markets. So investing in a property that does all of these things that you do, that you do the water, you do the solar, you pair up with good companies that are legitimate, and follow through with the savings, that's going to make the most for your investors. So where I'm going with this is it goes all the way down to an institutional investor, like a wealthy individual accredited, all the way up to the big boys that invest in funds. But ESG and what you're doing really pushes buttons, and that's what everybody wants right now.
So it could be in the form of a multifamily funds. Like we're thinking about creating multifamily funds next year and whatnot. It could potentially be a fund that we specialize to say you're now investing multifamily funds that is to do with sustainability.
Yes.
Or creating the ESG, multifamily. Now, what are some criteria to fit? Is there like a, percentage of energy saved or percentage of energy generated, to qualify for some of these, or that's kind of just Wild West?
It's kind of the Wild West. If you're talking about leadership and energy efficient design, there's case studies out there that say LEED buildings sell for more. To get the maximum credits for solar, all you need is 17% of your energy offset to get 4.
That's nothing. That's like every single price you can do. Nothing.
It's a waste. Like you get economies of scale in terms of lower cost installation on bigger systems. So with solar and with other renewable energy measures, you're really best bang for the buck is to do it, because once you go solar, it's very unlikely that you go solar again. So what you're doing there is putting as much as you can that makes the most economic sense onto the property to increase property value, save money, and do all of these things. Plus you get big tax benefits. So with all that, I mean, we've done the internal rate of returns analysis, just the high level rudimentary, and you're somewhere in the 25% range on a 7-year hold with selling the property at a higher property value. So that is, if you're going to do a fund to have investors invest in a fund, that's wonderful. I think you're hitting all the marks, you're checking all the boxes, and you're doing things the right way. I've worked, in this business a long time. We've worked with other multifamily people, and a lot of other multifamily investors we work with, we loved working with them. But in my opinion, because I did some real estate brokerage, they were kind of putting lipstick on a pig. They were doing light renovations, throwing a little bit of solar on there, and they weren't maximizing the value of what you're doing. And what you're doing is going to kick off the highest return in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. I didn't know that you were a brokerage before. So that's how you kind of tie all these. Because when you talk to with John, he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to leveraging different kind of projects. Ask him about how to trade solar credits and all that stuff. It's very interesting. Cool. Lastly, I want to kind of wrap it off. I'm going to put Ensamo's information over here to SAS. I just want to also say, thank you to SAS because they have, hosted a few of our community events up in Houston area. And not only that, they saved us on the utility and credit valuation, but also bring joy to our community. So thanks to them. So I want to kind of wrap it up, and we will be posting the how do you contact Ensamo information over here. The best way is to kind of look up him on LinkedIn. Not very common, so you can definitely find him on LinkedIn. John and Jacob, what's the best way to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, for feasibility studies, for questions on policy, questions on SREX, random questions on, does solar work and what are the physics of it, contact Jacob or myself. And we have direct line. It's 855-767-5551. Or just reach out to support@sunrenew.com. And Sunrenew is spelled SUNRENU.com.
Great. I mean, these are really interesting topics we talked about, because this is like a really exciting stuff where you're going really forward. Saving utility, not sexy, like using Ensamo says, but really they change your bottom line. So anyone who's in the business, that bottom line changes $1 for $1 versus if you increase the profit, that's not exactly $1 for $1. Hector asked, what is the typical time frame to recover the investment in solar? I think we talked about, like, in our project, we have seen like 10 years is about the 10 years is about the time frame. That's why I was saying, okay, you get 10 years usage, and that's assuming utility does not go up. There's a small increment that John builds into his model on utility does go up, maybe 2% or something. But consumer reports are just out, and our index our inflation has just hit 6.3. And in relative, we want to keep it at 2. So if you hit a 6.3, then you're at 3 times more. you guys know it. I don't need to tell you more, but where are you going to stash your money is the question. And then do you believe inflation is going to hit more? So I think, there's a different series of all these printing money, etc., is creating that. So that being said, run it back into utility. So as inflation increases, the utility company bills are also going to increase at a similar rate. So the model is built out for 10 years with a 2% inflation rate or so.
Yours was a little lower than that. We do 2.7%, and the reason why we do that for utility increases because it's the last 30 years historical rate increase for utilities. Now APS just went in for a rate case. They want 6%. So
to keep up with inflation.
it's good for you because you're avoiding big rate increases through inflation, and they'll probably get somewhere close to 4 to 4.5%. So what we modeled is 2.7% annual increase in utility, and I think El Cortez was like 5.5 years off the top of my head. Amara may have been a little more, but I think we were under 7.
Right.
Again, assuming that you can monetize the tax credits, assuming that utility goes up 2.7%.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to kind of show that too. It's you invest in energy, investing also the stuff that you put on the property as well, and plus that does create an additional, like when we calculate down to it, like extra 5%. Not a huge lot, but helps a little bit on depreciation. And then ideally, Biden, if he's doing whatever that he says he's going to do, hopefully the energy credits is the tax credit that they give it to the energy saving is going to be more, because currently it's at like 22. John, can you kind of get into a little bit more about the tax credit?
You got it. Yeah, so the tax credits are currently at 26% for this year, 2021, and for next year, 2022.
Okay.
Now, we were at 30% the year before, and it was supposed to step down to 22 this year, but in the COVID relief bill, they got 26%
great
for this year and next year. But what's in the infrastructure bill, to talk a little bit about that, is it's not fully defined yet, but what's being talked about is going back to 30%, and the customers that don't have tax liability, that don't, real estate owners mostly do because it's passive activity, but if you didn't have passive activity income, you could apply for a direct pay. So it's a direct check from the government. And we saw this back in 2010, 11, and 12, when it was the payment in lieu of tax credit. They just cut you a check. So that's in the infrastructure bill. It's being talked about. It's not finalized, but if it does go back to 30% and a direct pay, you can apply for that.
Got it. That's awesome. Thanks for noting that for us, and I'm sure our CPA will ask it to do this as well when it comes time for. But this is great information to have as well. Great, awesome. So wanted to wrap our presentation today. Any parting word, obviously, but any parting words over there?
I mean, yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for having us on the webinar. It was a pleasure. And yeah, if you guys have any questions in the audience for us, me and John at any time, please reach out to us via email or phone call that John provided earlier. And yeah, thank you once again.
Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes.
If you're listening and you have a project, just feel free to run it by us. We're the company that will shoot you straight on whether it's a deal or not a deal. And we can spend 5 minutes looking at your electric bill and tell you what kind of ROI to expect. And so back to your question, Elisa, you said, Hector asked it, what is the traditional ROI? We usually see between 5 and 7 years in this Southwest market. Midwest, you're in the 8 to 11 years. And then the other states, it's hit or miss on the East Coast on whether it's going to be in the 6 to 8 or 10 to 12 year ROI range. So it depends on state and policy and utility and all that fun stuff. But happy to offer any free advice to anybody to see if they can do what you're doing on something that they own, or feel free to reach out to you, and we're happy to answer questions.
What about Northwest? Sorry, we have a lot of listeners over here from Northwest.
So like Washington,
Seattle,
yeah, low utility rates, low sun hours. It's not a great state, unfortunately, for commercial.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
commercial. Okay, good. That's good to know. All right. Then I won't ask you for any of that. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This wraps up our another live webinar for Easy Real Estate Easy 360. Thank you so much for our speakers over here, John, Jacob, and Samo, who we lost. And we'll put this recording up in the post in our YouTube. You can find us out on the YouTube channel to check out our other live webinars, and also check out our next episode, which we will be recording in Cabos, Mexico.
Cool.
We'll be talking about financial independence, the style of financial independence, and working remotely or living remotely, and how to use geo arbitrage to create your financial independence lifestyle. So that will be what we talk about. And thank you so much.
I'm gonna join that one. That sounds awesome.
Great. Yes. I will add you to our list then, John. Let me
right.
know.
Please do.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you soon. And
Thank you.
last episode we had, just a reminder, is we basically got all the tax professionals together, the cost seg, the 1031 exchange. One of them is rabbi. I was thinking about the analogy to rabbis and the priest. Anyway, we did got the cost seg and the CPA and the 1031 exchange expert and the tax lawyer together. Talked about passive gain. How do you offset a passive gain? So I know some of you guys have tax credit or tax gain at the end of the year, especially passive tax gains. If you sold a project, this and that, so you want to check out that episode as well, it'd be great. Just check it out on our YouTube. All right, we wrap this up, and this is truly one of the webinar I really enjoy because there's so much unknown, and we learned a lot from John and Jacob today. Thank you.
Thank you.